I was about to give her the proposal of her dreams, but instead I exposed the secret she thought she could keep forever. I woke up that morning to find my phone flashing with 10 missed calls and just as many voicemails, all from a number with an area code I didn't recognize. After dealing with one too many Chinese spam calls lately, I'd set my phone to send unknown numbers straight to voicemail. Usually Beijing Betty, as I like to call her, didn't bother leaving a message. The house was still quiet, my daughters sleeping soundly down the hall, so I figured I might as well see what all the fuss was about. That's when I first learned that my wife, Claire, not in Jacksonville, Florida visiting her folks like she told me, was actually in a hospital burn unit all the way in Boulder, Colorado. For a long moment I just sat there, the world feeling like it tilted sideways. Meanwhile my phone buzzed again, throwing news alerts at me. Normally I'd just ignore them, I always meant to turn those off but never got around to it. One word from a headline caught my eye though: fire. I remembered half glancing at something about a blaze in Boulder when I'd first picked up my phone. Curiosity, or maybe just dread, made me check the homepage. There it was in big, bold letters. Devastating forest fire destroys Boulder suburb overnight. Now, I've never claimed to be the smartest guy around, but I could put two and two together. And there was really only one reason Claire would lie about where she was going for the weekend. I didn't rush. What would be the point now? I brewed a pot of the good coffee, the kind I usually saved for weekends when the girls slept in, and sat quietly in the dining room where Claire had set up her little workspace. Her laptop sat there, looking innocent enough, but when I opened it I found it was now password protected. That was new. Still, Claire was never exactly cautious. A quick search through the junk drawer in the writing desk turned up a scrap of paper with the password scribbled on it. Typical Claire, careless in the little ways that mattered most now. Once inside, it didn't take long to see what she'd been hiding. She hadn't even properly logged out of her email, just shut the laptop lid and trusted a password to keep her secrets. But those old assumptions about trust and privacy in our home? They were shattered the moment I started reading. It turns out, Claire had been sneaking off to Boulder to see her college ex, a guy named Jason Turner. The same Jason who once broke her heart by marrying someone else. From what little I pieced together through their emails, mostly just travel plans and meetup confirmations, it seemed Jason had either been feeling guilty after all these years, or just lonely enough to stir up old feelings. There weren't a lot of emotional confessions written down. I figured they saved that for phone calls. But one thing stood out, something that hit even harder than her affair. Her parents and her sister? They knew. They knew and helped her cover it up. I didn't have to guess. Their chat messages, left wide open, told the story clear as day. They all thought she ought to marry Jason since his family had money. Sitting there, reading those messages, I felt like I was frozen in time, like one of those slow-motion car crashes you just can't tear your eyes away from. I forced myself to breathe long and deep, trying to keep it together. If I didn't, I might have put my fist straight through the drywall. Once I steadied myself, I picked up the phone and called the hospital in Boulder. When the operator answered, the first thing out of my mouth, almost by instinct, was asking if a Jason Turner was admitted there. They asked how I was connected to Mr. Turner, and before I could even think, I said I was a friend. The woman told me she couldn't release any information unless I was family. That non-answer said enough. Jason Turner was there, all right. Next, I called the number that had been left in one of the voicemails. It connected me directly to the hospital's reception desk. After explaining who I was, the clerk confirmed what I already feared deep down. Claire had been brought in with third-degree burns covering over 80% of her body. Worse still, the smoke had done a number on her lungs. They explained that a fire had ripped through a drought-stricken neighborhood near Boulder. The wind turned the blaze into a monster overnight, cutting off the only road out. More than 100 homes went up in flames. I shook my head and said, "That can't be my wife. She's in Jacksonville, Florida." I even told them they must have gotten something mixed up before hanging up. But no matter what my mouth said, my gut knew better. Claire wasn't in Florida. She hadn't been for days. Finishing my coffee, I noticed yet another missed call from a number I didn't recognize. This time there was a voicemail waiting for me from someone who introduced herself as Tina, Jason's wife. I called back right away. When she answered, I had to ask, "Miss Turner, is your name really Tina?" "Yes," she said, her voice tight. "When I married Jason, I always had this fear tucked in the back of my mind. The woman he left behind. I always wondered if she'd show back up someday. And now, well, now everything's fallen apart. You must be Claire's husband," she added, her words cutting through the air like a knife. "Yeah, that's me." Tina sighed. "I knew about Claire back when Jason and I first got together. Recently he's been different. I just didn't know why until now. There wasn't much courtesy left between us at that point. Hanked-up anger and heartbreak left no room for pleasantries. "Have you heard from Claire?" she asked, her voice trembling. That question hit me sideways. I paused, gathering myself. Why would I have heard from her? I said, my voice sharpening. "She's supposed to be upstairs in her childhood bedroom right now, spending time with her parents and sister. Isn't that right? Hanging out with your husband while she's at it?" There was a heavy silence before she finally said, "Claire really does love you, you know. I get that we've never exactly been close, but—" I cut her off, my voice rising with every word. "Don't insult me with that garbage. Don't you dare." Before either of us could say anything more, there was some rustling on Tina's end. Then I heard someone else in the background, an older man's voice, strained and weak. It was Bob, Claire's dad. "Hank," he said, his voice breaking, "the pills, they're not working anymore." My stomach twisted. "What pills?" I demanded, my voice dropping to a low, dangerous growl. "I thought you knew about the pills," Bob said weakly. "I told you once. About the ones. I take them to calm down," Bob said quietly. "But they're not working anymore." I rubbed my face, feeling the anger simmering just under my skin. "Why are you even telling me all this?" I asked, almost more to myself than to him. Tina spoke up again. "At the hospital, they put me through to the ICU where Jason's in critical condition. The nurse thought maybe hearing a familiar voice would help, even though he's in a coma." She paused, her voice shaky. I lost it. I started yelling at him. Told him it was all his fault. His girlfriend's in the next room, barely clinging to life, and it's because of him. There was a hollow ache in her voice, one that I recognized all too well. "And after all that," Tina continued slowly, "I realized. I've spent so much time wondering what was wrong with me. Why wasn't I enough? But seeing how messed up they are, it's weird. It makes me feel a little better." Then she added, almost shyly, "You're not too bad looking either, you know." I couldn't help but snort, the first real sound of humor I'd made all morning. "Thanks," I said, the sarcasm a thin cover over the ache in my chest. "Nice to hear, even if my wife clearly preferred your husband." Tina let out a breath. Maybe the problem isn't us." I nodded even though she couldn't see it. "I've been thinking the same thing." She hesitated, then asked, "Have you ever wondered why they did it? I mean, was it just because they could?" I thought about it for a second. Probably. I think they figured they could get away with it. That no one would ever find out. Today had probably given the hospital staff a real crash course in dealing with tangled, messy family disasters. I couldn't imagine we were the first, but we sure were leaving a mark. But there was something else bothering me, something nagging at the back of my mind. So I asked, "Why do you think she tried so hard to get a message to me?" Tina's voice dropped lower. "I wasn't there when Claire was brought in. But a friend of mine was. She told me, your wife latched onto her arm like a drowning person. Wouldn't let go, not until they promised they'd call you." I swallowed hard, feeling something twist deep inside. "Your wife," Tina continued gently, "she fought them with everything she had. Wouldn't let them do a thing until she was sure you'd get the message." I sat there, turning it over in my mind, but honestly, I wasn't in the mood for any more thinking. About that time, Becky wandered back into the living room, flopping down in front of the TV like it was any other lazy Saturday morning. Watching her, I knew there was absolutely no way I was going to drag my girls out to a hospital in Colorado just to see their mother wrapped up like a mummy. That wasn't the kind of memory I wanted to leave them with. 30 minutes later, I had it all set. I booked us a full week at Disneyland, got a room at one of Mickey Mouse's fancy hotels, and snagged plane tickets for the next morning. Nicole, Tina's daughter, would be staying with friends. Her house had burned down in the fire, and even though Tina was barely holding it together, she was putting on the brave face, playing the noble widow for the sake of her kids. She told me she hadn't said a word to them about Claire. Tina's kids were older, old enough to know something terrible had happened to their dad. No way to shield them from it. But my girls? They were still young enough to believe in magic. And for a little while longer, I was determined to keep it that way. I stuck with the same approach, keeping things light for the girls, never bad-mouthing their mother no matter how hard it got. But I'll be honest, it wasn't easy. Not by a long shot. Not long after we got back from Florida, a delivery guy showed up at our door with 2 packages. They were addressed to Claire. Guess her folks had them sent over. I didn't open them. Just stuck them in the garage with everything else I wasn't ready to face. I wasn't angry enough to lash out at anyone, not physically. That's not who I am. But when it came to dignity, to consequences, I had no issue making sure the world knew exactly what kind of betrayal I'd been dealt. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I posted a video online. It showed me flushing Claire's ashes down the toilet. I included a short explanation, nothing graphic, just the truth. What she did, what it meant, and what it cost. Afterward, I wondered briefly if the National Park Service might hit me with a fine for polluting a bathroom. Honestly, if they did, I'd pay it with a smile. It would have been worth every cent. I didn't reach out to her relatives after that. But I saw in the local paper that they held some sort of memorial service in Jacksonville. They didn't invite me. Didn't invite the girls either. I guess they were still clinging to the story she told them. Or maybe they just didn't want to deal with the wreckage she left behind. When the girls asked, I told them their mom had been in an accident. That she was gone. I didn't say more. I couldn't. Not yet. I used to think our love story was the kind that only existed in movies. We went on dates that lasted till sunrise, and after 2 years we tied the knot. If you told me back then that Claire would one day cheat on me, I would have laughed. No way. Not her. We were that couple, matching t-shirts, holding hands in public, always whispering private jokes. Claire worshipped the ground I walked on. And our marriage was fun. Playful. We explored the world together. I thought I was living the dream. Then the changes started. At first it was small things. She stopped sharing gossip when she got home the way she used to, those silly little updates from her day. Suddenly she only talked if I asked a direct question. And even then her answers felt obligatory. Like she was checking a box, not having a conversation. It got worse in the bedroom. She started acting like I was too needy, too focused on being close. Said life wasn't all about that kind of connection. That used to be her favorite part of being with me. Now it was a chore. I started noticing the little things too. When I'd sneak up behind her and wrap my arms around her like I always did, she'd tense up. Once she elbowed me away. Looked genuinely annoyed. That happened more than once. And then came the outfits. She started dressing up to go out with her friends. Not that she didn't always take pride in how she looked, but now it was different. She took time. Did her makeup like she was going on a date. Hair curled just right. That spark in her eye, the one that used to be for me, was shining for someone else. Then the lie unraveled. One weekend she told me she was out with her girlfriends. But something didn't add up. I called one of them, someone I trusted. She was confused. Said she hadn't seen Claire. Said there weren't any plans and nothing had been posted in their group chat. That's when I knew for sure. That moment, that betrayal, flipped a switch in me. If someone had asked my name or why I was there, I couldn't have answered. I remember walking into that gym like I was in a fog. Next thing I knew, I was standing in front of him, Jason, the so-called football coach, and my fists did what my brain couldn't. I wasn't thinking straight. Not at all. I was so angry that day I completely lost it. I didn't hold back. I just started swinging, fists fueled by months of bottled-up betrayal. I beat the life out of that man, and it took several people nearby to pull me off him before it went any further. Claire stood there frozen. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. Just stared like she didn't even know what was happening. Her silence, honestly, cut deeper than any words could have. Maybe she realized in that moment just how far gone everything was. I tried to hold it together in public, kept a stone face on until I got back home. But the second that front door closed behind me, I cracked. I cried, quietly but hard, right there in the hallway. Then I got up, grabbed a few garbage bags and started throwing every trace of her out onto the front lawn. Clothes, jewelry, photos, all of it. What hit me hardest wasn't just that she slept with someone else, it was who she chose. That same arrogant jerk from college. The guy who used to strut around like he was God's gift. She once told me she only ever felt pretty around him, that he made her feel wanted. Hearing that stung. But even if I understood why she did it, it didn't make the betrayal hurt any less. When I finally told her we were getting a divorce, she broke down. Begged me not to make any rash decisions. Said I'd regret it later. Asked me for another chance, as if I hadn't already given her 1,000. The nerve. Long story short, we did divorce. Her parents found out what happened, and to my surprise they sided with me. They ended up disowning her. As for the guy she had the affair with, well, his days of charming his way through life ended pretty quickly. Her parents reported him to the school he worked at, and apparently they were already fed up with his baggage. He lost his job not long after. It's wild how things circle back. Back when we first got married, Claire was so excited about it all. She dreamed of walking down the aisle in a white gown, showing off her wedding band to everyone. We kept it simple, just a quiet ceremony, small guest list. It was supposed to be our fresh start. In college we had totally different majors. I studied to become an electrician. Good, honest work with steady pay. Claire went the business route and became a consultant. We made it work. Shared the bills, had our own rhythm. Things felt balanced. On paper, anyway. But there was always this one guy, Ethan. I never liked him. He had history with Claire from before she met me. He was the bragging type, always talking himself up, and whenever he was around I felt like I was competing for her attention. I know maybe that sounds insecure, but I had my reasons. Eventually I told her it had to be one or the other. Him or us. And to her credit, she picked me. She promised to cut all contact. No texts. No calls. No chance to accidentally reconnect. We even had this little rule in the house. The only time we used the home computer for social media, Facebook, Instagram, whatever, was when we were both around. Kind of like a mutual trust thing. It worked for a while. Then came that day. I sat down to log into Facebook and noticed something right away. Claire's profile was still logged in. At first I thought nothing of it. Just a leftover tab, maybe. But curiosity? That's a dangerous thing. I honestly only meant to log her out, just click a button and forget about it. But the second I saw all those unread messages, something in me snapped. Curiosity? No, it was deeper than that. It was the need to know. To finally get the truth no one was offering me. I opened a few of the chats, just a few, I told myself. But it didn't take long. What I saw, it gutted me. Long strings of flirty texts, late-night messages, photos I wish I could unsee. She wasn't even hiding it well. She was reckless, careless, or maybe she just didn't think I'd ever look. Something inside me broke. And then something else kicked in, a kind of cold, focused fury. I changed her Facebook password. Her email was still logged in too, so resetting everything was easy. Too easy. And once I had control, I posted screenshots of her messages, every damning word, every sick smiley face, right there on her page for everyone to see. I wrote a caption like I was her. I'm a cheap cheat who threw away a good man. I destroyed my own marriage. It wasn't my proudest moment, but it felt justified. It felt necessary. Like the truth needed a stage. Then I logged out. I headed to our bedroom, no, her bedroom now, and started packing up my stuff. I didn't want to breathe the same air anymore. She came home that evening, carrying groceries like it was any other day. The look on her face when she saw the bags by the door? That told me she knew. She dropped everything and started talking, fast and desperate. I can explain, she said. You're mixing things up. Just talk to me, just give me a chance. But I didn't want a speech. I didn't want lies with a softer tone. I grabbed my bags and walked out without another word. For weeks she called. Left voicemails. Sent texts that started with please and ended with I still love you. I didn't answer a single one. I wasn't just heartbroken, I was hollow. That kind of betrayal doesn't just hurt, it redefines your whole sense of self. For a while I turned to the bottle. I drank more than I cared to admit. Every night blurred into the next, and mornings felt like punishment for surviving. It took me a long time to pull myself out of that spiral. But I did. Because as much as her betrayal destroyed something in me, I wasn't going to let it destroy all of me. I used to wonder how people moved on from being cheated on like it was just another breakup. Like they could shrug off the emotional wreckage and be fine. I tried to do the same, but the harder I forced myself to pretend I was okay, the more broken I felt. Eventually, I accepted something. Everyone has their own way of dealing with heartbreak. Mine. It was alcohol. Yours might be silence. Or rage. Or therapy. But the important thing is that I quit. I took my life back. These days, I hear people say things like, women are unpredictable, or you're better off with a dog than a disloyal partner. And while that might sound bitter, I get it. I really do. Because when you've lived through betrayal, even love starts to look like a risk you can't afford. In the end, I'm grateful I left her. I divorced her, I walked away, and I never looked back. You can't build a future while dragging the past like a dead weight. I yelled before I even thought it through, told her she had the wrong person, like I didn't just watch my wife kissing the back of my twin brother's neck. They both jumped away from each other like they'd been caught sneaking snacks before dinner. Tried to laugh it off. Said it was nothing. Said I was overreacting. My sister-in-law and I both forced an awkward laugh, pretending we hadn't seen what we'd seen. They kept saying they were just talking out by the garage. My brother had a detached garage in the backyard, and apparently that's where they disappeared to after dinner. They claimed they were checking on something he'd been working on. Fine. But I couldn't ignore what I'd seen. Later that night, I saw a strange message on her phone. It was short, vague, just a quick back and forth between the two of them. But it felt loaded. Like there was something they didn't want to say outright. and they mentioned meeting in the garage. I didn't hesitate. I got up, walked outside, and sure enough, the lights in the garage were on. I peeked through the small side window, dreading what I might see. But the space was empty. Not a soul inside. Still, I knew something was wrong. I could feel it in my chest. The next morning, everything came to a head. My sister-in-law had had enough. She told them both, my wife and my brother, that they were no longer welcome. She kicked them out of the house. Just like that. She couldn't stomach sharing a roof with either of them. I had a dozen missed calls from my wife, all ignored. Whatever she had to say, I didn't want to hear it. Not yet. Instead, I reached out to my sister-in-law first. I wanted to know how she was holding up. We'd both been blindsided. She told me she'd asked my wife, point blank, why she'd do something like this. Her response? That it was something she'd always wanted to do. Like it was some teenage fantasy she finally decided to live out. Like our marriages were disposable. That was the moment everything turned. My sister-in-law told me she was filing for divorce. And I knew right then I was doing the same. We both went through with it. It wasn't pretty, but it was necessary. That decision left my brother and my ex-wife reeling. Suddenly they were on their own, and not in the romantic way they might have imagined. My ex had to pick up a second job just to keep up with the bills. Reality hit her fast. She went from dreaming about it to struggling to make rent. Thankfully, we were only renting, so there wasn't much to fight over in terms of property. No big legal battles. No drama over who got what. But what we did have to sort out, our kids, was the hardest part. Now we share custody. It's not perfect, but we're doing what we can to give them something close to normal. I keep things civil. For them. They didn't ask for this. They just want their parents to show up, be decent, and not tear each other apart. I hope if you're reading this, you're in a better place now too. I hope you found your way forward like I'm trying to do. Eventually, I told her we needed to break up. I couldn't keep pretending that everything was okay. But I also said, maybe foolishly, that I'd be open to staying friends. After a long and emotional conversation, though, we both hesitated. There was still something between us, or at least it felt that way. We decided, despite everything, to keep trying. To give it one more shot. We talked through our issues, especially the physical side of things. I still wanted intimacy, but I wasn't about to beg for it. She said she still wanted that too, but just needed me to understand she wasn't always in the mood. So our compromise was that she'd try to be more direct. Tell me when she felt ready instead of me having to guess. It sounded fair. Reasonable even. But something about the way she said it didn't sit right. I pushed that feeling aside. Days went by. Then weeks. She still didn't initiate anything, not once. I kept telling myself not to read too much into it, but eventually I couldn't hold back. One night I asked her point blank, "Is there something going on?" She looked me in the eyes and told me no. Said she just hadn't been in the mood lately, but that it wasn't about me. That there was no one else. I wanted so badly to believe her, and for a few moments I did. Her voice sounded honest. Reassuring. At least it did, until the next morning. She was wearing a light-colored sweater with a slightly loose collar, and as she turned her head, I caught a glimpse of her neck. Just for a second. A dark mark, barely visible under makeup, but definitely there. A hickey. My stomach dropped. She must have noticed me looking because she tugged the collar up without saying a word. I didn't confront her, not right away. I needed more than a gut feeling. More than a smudge of doubt. A few days later, she told me she was heading to yoga. Something about the way she said it felt off, like she was reading from a script. So I followed her. I kept my distance, watched from my car. Sure enough, she met up with a guy I didn't recognize. They walked together, laughing like they shared some inside joke, and then headed back to what I figured was his apartment. While they were inside, I started digging into who this guy was. I remembered her mentioning someone she was excited about recently, some mutual friend or coworker who'd just gotten engaged. Couldn't be the same guy, could it? But it was. She told me all about his engagement. Talked about how happy she was for him, how beautiful his fiancée was, how fun the wedding was going to be. And here she was sneaking around with him. That part, knowing he was already engaged, that made everything feel 10 times worse. Like they weren't just hurting me. They were hurting someone else too. I found some old text exchanges between us where she said she wasn't really interested in marriage, how she didn't think it was necessary, how she liked things as they were. I forwarded those to myself just in case I needed them later. Then I did something bold. Maybe even cold. I found out who his fiancée was. She had just finished law school and recently started working at a local law firm. I reached out, casually, like I was someone with a business inquiry. Set up a time to meet under the guise of discussing something professional. What I had to tell her wasn't professional. It was personal. And it was going to hurt. I found out she offered one free consultation at her firm and I took advantage of that. I set up a meeting under the guise of needing legal advice, but when I sat across from her in that quiet office, I didn't waste her time. I came clean immediately. I explained who I was, who her fiancé really was, and how I ended up sitting there, telling her what no one else would. I showed her the messages, the photos, everything. Watching her face fall, seeing the pain wash over her, felt like watching myself in a mirror. She didn't deserve it any more than I did. I didn't stick around long after. I said my piece, gave her what she needed to know, and left her with whatever decisions she needed to make. That night, my mind wandered back to how things almost were, how close I had come to tying myself to someone who didn't really love me the way I thought she did. I remembered the evening I had planned before everything went to hell. I had paid the band to play her favorite song at the restaurant where I was going to propose. I had it all mapped out. The moment the opening chords hit the speakers, she would light up. She would know it was for her. And she did that night. She smiled through tears, touched her heart, and said it was perfect. I even went so far as to get down on one knee, pretending like I was about to propose. Her face was pure joy. She was glowing, crying, laughing all at once. It was everything I had imagined for so long. Every look, every emotion told me she would have said yes without hesitation. And then, before asking her the final question, I stood back up. I looked her in the eyes and said calmly, "This is what might have happened, if I hadn't found out you were sleeping with someone else." Her smile crumbled into confusion, then horror. I didn't need to hear her excuses. I didn't want her tears. I left her standing there, the moment ruined beyond repair. After that, I made plans fast. Changed my number. Packed up my things. Found a new apartment across town. Somewhere she wouldn't know about. I needed space, not just physical but emotional. I needed a clean break. "I'm really sorry you had to go through all of this. You were honest. You communicated what you needed. You even gave her the opportunity to leave before it ever came to betrayal. That shows a level of respect and maturity not everyone can claim. But she wanted it all. She wanted the safety you gave her and the excitement of something forbidden. And in doing so she lost both. You deserved better. And now you have the chance to find it,